Whether you have to deal with a person who is just prickly and overly sensitive, a person who insists on being the devil's advocate all of the time, a person who's passive aggressive, or a person who's just aggressive. All of these people are challenging. They can take up a lot of our time and a lot of our mental energy and a lot of our emotional energy as well. They just are. But just as there's no single type of difficult person, there is no set approach for dealing with them. The difficult people can certainly be on your staff, and that requires one set of skills. They can be your peers, they can be your boss, they can be both. It can be a lot more personal than that, though. Your spouse, your child, other relatives, they may be difficult. You may have difficult people in your friend circle. Yeah, we've all experienced that. They can just come from anywhere in our lives. What I want us to work on, or what I'm going to provide, are strategies that you can use, that you can modify for different people in different situations. I want you to test them. I want you to use them. I want you to mold them to your personality and to each unique situation. First things first, get yourself in check. Get a grip. Take the inward glance. Examine your own emotions about dealing with the other person. Would you like to throttle them? Have you been ignoring them because that's the path of least resistance? Because sometimes we do that. Feelings matter. Your feelings matter, their feelings matter. How are your feelings getting in the way? That's a tough question. That's a really tough one. I want to look at the range of possible feelings that you may be having or have had towards the person and towards the potential conflict. You could be angry. And that anger could manifest itself in frustration, in rage, in indignation, or in absolute exasperation. Or you may be suppressing your own anger, and that suppression isn't good either. It may be making you the kind of difficult person that you don't want to be. It may be making you bitter. Believe it or not, you could be jealous of the other person. I know we don't like to admit that. They may be smarter than you. They may be more advanced in their career than you. They may be better connected, whatever. Jealousy is a real emotion that we pretend we don't have. We pretend. But let's get real. Jealousy really could be a factor that makes it harder for you to deal with the difficult person and the conflict. And that jealousy may be making you the difficult person. I know that's hard to hear. The next emotion that may potentially be an obstacle is fear. You may literally be afraid of their reaction, their reply, or their wrath. You may fear the results of dealing with a really tough personality. If there's a power differential, you may fear their retaliation, and that fear can be real. Sometimes they're real. A potential interaction with a difficult person can also surface our own self-doubt. Maybe part of the reason that we find them so difficult is because our confidence is lacking. We may feel inadequate or inept in some way, shape, or form. And dealing with them may bring all of that up. It may bring up our own buried self-doubt. Now, it seems like I'm only listing all of the negative emotions. Well, there really are also quite a few positive emotions that can actually be accompanied with our approaching tough people and tough situations. There can be positive things. You know, you may hold hope in your heart. Even with the most tough cases, we can still maintain hope. Hope for a positive outcome, hope for resolution. In fact, if we enter the interaction with some positive energy, there is a chance that we can have a positive impact on the other person and on the situation. So hope is possible. Another very positive emotion that we may have is gratitude. Think about it. If you are expecting to resolve a long-standing issue with a tough cookie, you may be very appreciative for the opportunity to move forward, to get it out on the table. You may be expecting a relief, and you may just be thankful that there's a chance of moving on. So gratitude is real. You know, if you have the liberty of ending a negative relationship, you may be thankful about that too. You may be. As you really prepare for a conversation, a meeting, or an encounter with a difficult person, I want you to begin by reflecting on your own emotions. This self-awareness, you know I'm big on self-awareness, it's going to help you be more confident, and it's also going to help you be more clear. It's this self-awareness that will enable you to be more calm. All right, let's get to it. How do you deal with difficult people? We've covered the first step, which is identifying your stuff, your own emotions, and really coming to terms with them and with what you are bringing. So that's the first step. The next step is all about problem identification. What is the problem? What is the problem that this person presents? Now, is it a repeated pattern of behavior? Is it an obvious attitude or a specific pattern of actions? You have a better chance of dealing effectively if you're clear about the real problem. Remember, you're only identifying the problem from your perspective. They have a perspective too. That perspective is bound, your perspective is bound to be skewed, especially if you have a history of conflict, stress, or negative interactions with this person. It's still good to be clear about how you see them based on your experiences, how you see the problem, how you see the conflict. So here comes the really tough part. You have to address it. You have to face the behavior in the person. You have to plan to have a one-on-one conversation. You have to deal with their behavior. You have to deal with why it's difficult, and you have to deal with what you need going forward. Initially, this can seem like you are planning for a confrontation, like you are getting ready for battle. But it doesn't have to be like that. That's not it at all. What you're preparing to do is to have a conversation which may or may not be difficult. The conversation, it's going to be much easier if you don't judge them. Simply state what you've observed, state what you're experiencing, state your feelings. You may have observed a behavior or an action or even a pattern. You may have observed some indicators of an attitude problem, but be prepared to state it clearly and to state it without judgment. And that's the hard part. I know that's the hard part for me. Just as you don't want to be judgmental, you don't want to make attributions. Attributions are the statements like, why are you making things so much harder for the team? Or why are you trying to hurt me? Or why are you stirring up trouble? Attributions assume either overtly or covertly that we know what another person intended. We do not know. We do not know their intent. We can only guess. And then we need to seek clarity from them about their intent. We are more likely to assume negative intent when we've had a history of negative interactions with a person. Inserting our own attributions and our judgments, it's only going to increase their defensiveness, and it's going to increase the likelihood of more misunderstandings, which is what we don't need. So thus far, we've checked our own emotions, we've checked our stuff, we've identified the problem from our perspective, and we've addressed the behavior. That's what we've done thus far. Now, this is time for the negotiations to begin. You didn't think that they were just going to acquiesce and agree to stop being a pain, did you? No, we got to do some negotiating here. So next, you're going to have to let them know what you need from them. And this is where the dialogue begins. Just as you have needs, so do they. So be willing to hear what they need to be able to do to tone down their difficult behavior. Invite them to share their perspectives, their needs. After all, you're only working with what you know. That is undoubtedly incomplete information. Seek their input. They are the only person who can change their behavior. So it's important to develop some understanding of why they're being problematic. It's important to understand why they're being difficult. Be prepared now for the person who is in absolute denial. When their denial pops up, you need to have very specific examples of whatever they're saying or doing that's problematic, that's difficult, or that's causing contention. You'll need to have the patience and the fortitude to redirect them. That's why you need clear examples of what's been said and what's been done. Now, just as there are people who are in denial, there are people who are going to deflect. Everything is because of you, because of someone else, because of some system, because of some policy. Everything and anything but them. Again, you have to redirect them to the behaviors that need to change. All of this redirecting takes a lot of energy, and I know it. And I know it's exhausting. I know how exhausting it can be. But you still have to do it. Now, I don't want you to dismiss what they're saying. Use it as a data point and use it as a learning opportunity. If they have valid points as to why they're doing what they're doing, deal with those valid points. Acknowledge those valid points. People want to be heard. Now, once you've both had the opportunity to make your points and make your positions known, you have to focus forward. What do you want from them going into the future? What do you need from them to move forward? And the same applies to their needs and their wants from you. Often people become difficult, they become cantankerous because they don't feel heard, they don't feel respected, and they don't feel valued. You may have a part in their feeling diminished. Listen, and listen with a learning ear. Empathy and validation can go a long, long way. I think it's important, very important, to state your shared understanding. Be sure that you both know what's needed, what's required, what's expected moving forward. Don't assume. Do not assume. You should each discuss what you understand in terms of changes. In the workplace, it's really important to document your shared understanding. It's very important. You may need that documentation a little bit further on down the road when expectations aren't met and you have to actually do disciplinary action. So documentation is critical in workplace situations. It may be helpful to really identify some action steps, some clear action steps that are expected to move into a more positive, productive future. This isn't always necessary, but I have found that it can really help. Here's what we know is true. Even our best efforts, and I mean our very best efforts, can fail. Knowing that, I have 3 points for you to consider. First, assess what happened in your attempt to deal with the difficult person or the situation. Does it feel like there's a glimmer of hope? Could success be possible? Be honest in your assessment. Be really honest. Remember, it's going to take some time to see changes in behaviors. It takes time. It takes time for people to decide to change their attitudes. Second, after you've assessed, you have to determine whether or not you can accept what's been presented. If you cannot accept, you will need to create more dialogue or move to more formal discipline. And that's going to depend on the nature of the relationship and on the context of the conflict. You can't take your husband up to HR. It will also depend on your position or your role if you're dealing with workplace issues and workplace conflicts. It's different with peers than it is with your boss, than it is with people on your team. Third, and finally, you may have to put distance, put some space between you and the other person. I know that this is not always possible. I know it's not always possible at work. Well, I'm going to take that back. You can change jobs. It may be hard, but you can make a change. You can also transfer, or you can terminate the difficult person. So distance is possible at work too. It really is, if we really think about it. As I wrap up, I need to say this. I know how hard it is to deal with difficult people. I know how hard it is. I know that the process begins with an inward look, really looking at the self. Only then can you move to identifying the problem, to addressing the behavior or behaviors, to expressing needs and wants, to hearing from the other person about their needs and wants. You've got to be able to focus forward. Focus forward. State your shared understanding. Once you've taken those steps, you've got to determine through a very thorough, very honest assessment whether you can accept the person and the situation or whether you need to create distance. Yeah, you've got to really think those things through. It's hard work to deal with difficult people. It is hard work. They test us. They try our patience. Now, what I hope is that you will have found some pointers in here that you'll be able to use to strengthen your skills at dealing with difficult people. You can do it. It takes practice, it takes determination, and you can do it.